Hey everyone, how's it going? Recently had a Neon Dynasty Best of 1 draft that I thought was interesting and wanted to make a video about. The thing I thought was interesting about it was I thought it was a really good example of how when you're drafting that the demands and plan of your deck typically should take precedent over like the common archetypes for certain color pairs. To spoil it a little bit, I end up in blue-black here, which is known to be typically the ninja deck, but we end up not in that space for reasons we'll see in the draft. And I thought it was a great example and one that would be worth going through. So here we start off pack one. We open a pack that's not especially great. Some notables, right? So we have the Hinata, the blue, red, white rare here. I think it's good if you happen to be in that color pair or color in those colors and you happen to have access to the mana already. But I'm not really looking to play 3-color early on. And also of the colors, like I'm not ecstatic about like blue white. It's not something that I think is super great. It's playable, but I think it's not super well supported. Same with red white. And so I'm not really thinking that I want to jump into this pick one. Granted, the pack's kind of weak, so I think it's defensible. Other considerations, the Mechanaut, which plays great in the blue-red deck, just because, again, typically it's artifact-themed. And I think I ended up going with the Specialist just because I like that it's one color. I think the Ninja decks typically are very good. And, I just want to stay open a little bit and see where the draft takes me. I'm not going to lock in and commit to this. I don't think it's a super strong first pick, but I'm okay taking it here. Here, quick, just taking inventory of what was taken. There's a rare missing from the pack. And so of the things I have available to me, I don't have much information as to, what colors my person to the right might be in yet. I'm guessing maybe not black. Of course, there are black rares you would take over Life of Toshiro, but not that many. Also, I can see just you never know who's in your pod with you, and the person to the right doesn't necessarily clock this as, an incredible card, which, in my opinion, I think that it is. And then, again, I have some Blue Ninja support, which this is kind of of course, the Twisted Embrace as well, but this is kind of an interesting pick already early in the draft. Like I said, I like the blue ninja decks. I think both of these cards, the Hacker and the Disruptor, are very important and very good in the ninja decks. But there's also, a clear discrepancy in power between them and Life of Toshiro. Early on, my general principles, I'm just taking the strongest card. I could set up for a really nice base for the ninja deck already, but I don't know that I'm going to end up there yet. This isn't a signal by any means, because again, there's just a rare taken, which, they could have taken like a Kikijiki or something, right? And so we don't know that it's open. They also could have taken a big blue rare, who knows? So I'm just taking the Life of Toshiro here. I think it's the best card and leaves me most open. Also note Spirited Companion, but again, given that I already have a good blue card, I don't think I would take the Companion here over these ones. But Toshiro's enough better that I think this is where I'm headed. Here again, looking at what's missing, there's a rare and it looks like the Saga missing. So I don't I think a lot of the sagas that would be missing here typically are in like blue and green, right? So you have like the uncommon ones, Boseiju and Behold, and then you have Modern Age at common. There's black ones too, of course, Life of Toshiro, Long Reach, and then in common like a Okiba Reckoner Raid. Again, I don't think that I'm putting too much stock into that. Again, I always like to take a look and try and think it through, but I don't have that much information yet. The pack is not especially strong here. I don't really see much that I'm super happy jumping into from where I am right now. So I'm just going to take the highest upside card here in the Mechanaut. If I end up in a blue-red place, then I'm super happy to have it. And if not, I don't feel like I'm missing out on too much by having sort of gambled on it here. So that's where I'm at. And then this pick was really interesting for me. Again, as usual, looking at what's missing, we have a rare and 2 uncommons missing from the pack. And while oftentimes I think that doesn't give you that much information because, of course, essentially it just means people are taking probably the strongest cards out of the pack. In this particular instance, I think it's a little bit of a signal that black might be open. And the reason why is because if you think about the black uncommons, assuming, let's say, a black card was taken out of this pack, and let's say uncommon, then what black uncommon is being taken over Long Reach of Night, right? You can make arguments maybe for like, I think it's Assassin's Ink or something, the removal spell, and then like maybe I guess there's like Chef or something, Life of Tashiro, but of course you can't have two sagas in the same pack. So this actually suggests to me to some extent that black is open here, even though it's early on and there's only rares and uncommons missing. Of course, yes, someone could have taken like a black rare, but I'm not saying that I know black is open. But I think it's important that you take into consideration factors because they can accumulate. If I see this and then later on I have another reason to think that black is open and then another reason, maybe independently they're not, guarantees, but when taken collectively, they could suggest very strongly that I should be in black. So here, this to me suggests that, I might want to lean towards black. As far as the cards that I'm picking here, this and this, the Twisted Embrace, if I knew definitively that I was in the ninja deck already, which, I mean, we're 3 picks in, I don't think you can know that 100%, but let's say it was the end of the draft, I do think that Twisted Embrace actually is a bit better than Long Reach in the ninja decks because they want to keep applying pressure. Also, decks that apply pressure, I think, support Twisted Embrace better because your opponent needs to tap out to develop their board, so they can't leave up interaction to deal with the Embrace as much. So I would say that, like, if I knew I was blue-black ninjas, I would probably be on Embrace here. But given that, again, I don't know yet where I'm at, I'm just going to take the Long Reach. I think that in the dark it's better because it's playable in, like, decks that aren't super grindy, but it also is great in those. And there's also some amount of synergy with, like, some of the ninjutsu cards, even if you don't end up pure in like the ninja plan, having sagas that you can pick back up with ninjutsu also is kind of a viable way to generate value in a longer game. So something to consider. And so I'm kind of on Long Reach here. Also looking at other things in the pack. I noticed there's this Jukai Preserver. So again, we don't have information as far as color preference because it was just uncommons and a rare missing that much, except for the discussion we had about black maybe. But again, just want to kind of keep track of what's in the pack. There's a Volt Surge. And then this Reliquary I think is just generally good card, but not really, again, telling us anything about colors. So moving forward. Here, again, not especially strong pack. I could maybe venture into like the green like value deck, but I have, again, a specialist. I already have one specialist. I might end up in blue-red still. Probably not, given that I have these 2 great black cards and again, my kind of read on black. But, there's not really, I think, a reason to move off the specialist here, given that I don't know that green's open. Here, again, this is a pretty late Virus Beetle. There's a rare, 2 uncommons missing, and then 2 commons. So I think that's right. Yeah, so that means that 2 commons were taken over the Virus Beetle. Who knows, they could be black. Can't be like Ogiba Reckoner Raid though, because there's still the Saga here. So I think there's some, again, like we talked about, accumulative factors where like this is kind of late and it's black, and so maybe I'm thinking, all right, black could be open. And also I like that Virus Beetle does play well in both of the archetypes that I might be in, where if I end up in like a black grindy deck, then Virus Beetle is great because it's a 2-drop that guarantees to trade for a card and then has upside elsewise. And if I end up in the ninja decks, of course we all been Virus Beetled a billion times by the same beetle before, so that one works out too. Here again, happy to pick up the Chef. In a longer game, same deal. And it has some nice synergy with the Virus Beetle already, right? Giving you a way to sort of grind out opponents with drawing cards off your like leftover bodies after it's already traded for one. So yeah, I think it's just by far the best card in the pack anyways, and I'm happy to pick it up here. And I'm feeling like I'm likely black here. Here, not the strongest pack, but again, thinking about the plan of the deck, I might end up in like a grindy black deck still. And if I do, then the Scrounger could be useful to me because it fixes mana, and a lot of times those decks want to be splashing. And also, note that it does have some synergies already with what I have going on. The artifact tokens that you make from the treasures, you can sack them to the chef to draw cards. So there's already some amount of synergy here. 3 mana 1/3 body or 1/4 body is something that I think that a slow controlling deck is not upset to play anyways. And so yeah, I think of my options here, this is sort of the best one that leaves a particular game plan in mind, and also again, I'm not giving up too much. And so around that pick, by the way, the Scrounger is when I'm starting to think that, firstly, as I said, I like black. I think that it's open given a couple of the picks I had, particularly the one with the long reach, the Virus Beetle, and the Chef. And I might end up somewhere that is like more controlling, even in blue-black, right? So I have that kind of seed planted already where I don't know. Again, I'm still staying open, and if I get past like a bunch of like hackers or open a bunch in like pack 2, I'm okay to move into the ninjas from here because I do have the support for it still. But given around this pick, I start to keep that option open for myself. So here, not much. I think I take this one, the 3/3. It's not, I think, where the ninja decks usually want to be, but you don't always get, the best version of your deck if you do end up there. And again, here, I don't know. I might be ninjas, I might not be. And if I am, I might end up wanting to play it. Here, so I get the Disruptor back, and if you recall, there were 4 blue cards in the pack. I remember taking note of this during the draft, and I think I forgot to mention it when we were looking at the pack the first time. But when you have the 4 good playable blue cards, then the odds that one of them comes back is a little higher because if you have, there would have to be 4 other people in blue at that point, and the pack had some good stuff in it elsewise, right? So we had like Spirit Companion, Embrace, all playable red cards here. Which notice all 3 of the red cards are missing, so there are at least a handful of red players at the table, or again, I should suggest that there could be. And so I'm happy to pick up this Disruptor here. I think I'm probably not ending up in blue-red still anyways, though. Again, I see there's red cards missing, and I already have kind of a read that I want to be black. But I'm happy to pick up the Disruptor if I end up in blue-black. It's one of the maybe the best thing that the blue-black deck wants to be doing turn 1. Maybe that or like Reckonerate or something, but it's pretty great, so I'm pretty happy to pick it up. And then here, I don't see a world where I'm playing 2 of these, even if I end up in like the ninja deck. I don't think it's happening. And I actually think this card is a little bit underplayed, the Disruption Protocol, in some of like the blue ninja decks, because if you can establish a board where they only have like 1 blocker and you're holding a Disruptor, maybe you ninja'd it back, or you disrupted something on 1 turn so you have an artifact to untap. I mean, it's just straight up counterspell, right? So you can prolong a board state where you have an advantage, and I think that the ninja decks, and actually just most of the blue artifact base decks, can use this as a means of answering things preemptively that they otherwise wouldn't have good answers for. And so I actually don't mind playing this every now and then if my deck lines up for it. Here, I was kind of surprised the Preserver came back. Not that it's like a great card, but it's certainly a decent playable in the green decks. And I was trying to figure out if this means that green is open or not. On one hand, I haven't seen a lot of green, which means maybe the people to my right are in green, meaning I should somewhat avoid it. But on the other hand, like we said, it was the only green pack. And thinking about what else was here, I could see a green player picking up any of these 3 cards, the Reliquary, the Terrarium, or the Terminal, and being like fine with that or wanting that even over a Preserver, depending on the demands of their deck. So on one hand, I want to keep this in mind. I think I take it here as like a hedge if I end up in like green-black. But it's not as huge of a signal as maybe it would seem, even given that it was the only green card. Here, nothing really for us. Same, again, Story Weave, I guess, if I end up green. And so here, this is when, so pack 2, I opened this Kyrie, and I'm starting to make real plans now that I want to not be a ninja deck as much as I want to be a control deck, because a lot of the tools I have available to me are kind of great in a control shell, even though blue-black control is not really sort of the common archetype for that color pair. I have the Chef and some ways to generate value in the Virus Beetle and the Scrounger. I have some ways to grind out games. I have great early game answers to opposing threats. And now I have this great bomb at the top of my curve that I can use to end games. And so this is, again, the thought process being, I'm noticing that I have the makings and tools to set up a real control deck here. And so that's sort of where my plan is headed. Again, I never like to commit to things, so I'm not saying, all right, now I'm a control deck, but I keep that in mind as an option so it influences the decisions I'm making further on down the line. And again, I notice Modern Age would be great if this wasn't like just a generic, like non-playable rare or something, right? I'd be happy to pick up a Modern Age here. I think you should play in like the ninja decks, you should play in the non-ninja decks, it's just a good card. But yeah, taking the Kyrie here. And this one was a really interesting one for me. So there's not that much in my colors. I have, Octopus, which is kind of okay, I guess. I'm not enthused about it. And then, or typically not enthused about it. I guess a Ninja's Kunai, a Koi, right? Kind of just mediocre stuff. And in green, I have this Boseiju reaches skyward. I already have a Preserver if I want to move that direction. But on the other hand, the Kyrie is really good. And so I'm not really looking to move off of blue. And I was considering if I wanted to speculate on the Boseiju reaches skyward, if I end up like in a blue-green kind of splashing some of the black cards maybe. But I don't really have good fixing at the moment. I have like the Scrounger, but if the plan is to end up in blue-green, then that's not good enough because I'm not splashing the Scrounger to fix for my black cards, right? And I don't think that I have enough to get there on black-green. And it's interesting, right? I had the read, I think that black is open, but I don't have a lot of black cards. And my thought process is that sometimes, again, there isn't a large volume of cards opened in a particular color, and I'm more likely to trust my read on the table than I am that I'm going to say, oh well, I was wrong, and the black isn't actually open. Sometimes that comes back to bite me, but that's sort of the way I think about it. If I'm putting a lot of thought into what's open and I again draw a certain conclusion, I'm willing to accept that sometimes I'll be wrong, but also then that if I think that, there just weren't that many black cards open, that's good enough. Fine, no big deal. I can still stay in black. So yeah, this doesn't fit into what I'm planning to do that much, or I don't see how it's going to all come together that well. And so I do realize, okay, well, this Octopus, while I'm not usually that high on it, I have some ways to push it through, right? So, right, if I drop it on 3, on 4, I have ways to bounce and maybe create some pressure or draw cards. I realize that this deck would like to hit its land drops because I'm getting to 6, and if I want to be playing like kind of a longer game in a controlling strategy, you're always happy to hit your land drops. And so I realized that having a way to pressure or draw cards is valuable. I probably need something on my curve at some point anyways. And while this isn't ideal, I think it does kind of support the game plan. And so I end up taking the Octopus here. And yeah, I'm not sure. Like maybe green was open, maybe it wasn't, but that's sort of the decision I went with. Here, now looking at what's available, I have in my colors just a Koi and this guy again I'm not really playing, and then I notice, okay, so there's some green stuff coming around, not huge signals, but just observationally, I was thinking about what if I'd taken that Boseiju, right? And here I don't think that I should move into green, especially given that I passed the Boseiju already, but I was just interested about it. And here, I will say I usually don't like splashing in my blue-black decks because they're usually ninja decks, and I usually get there on playables, and I'd rather just be doing things that are on plan with the blue-black strategy. I know there are people that will disagree with that. They think if you get Oath, you play Oath. But in a lot of my ninja decks, I found that not to be the case. So I usually like to keep them 2-color when I can. But again, here I'm thinking, even though I'm blue-black, I'm not necessarily ninjas. So I'm taking the oath here because then if my plan is to play a more controlling game, I can hopefully splash the oaths. It helps me, again, not kind of stall out in the late game because of the Scry 3. It plugs up the ground for me, and I have ways to deal with flying threats already to an extent, right? Because I have my own big, hard to remove flyer. I can stall them out a little bit with the specialists, and so yeah, I like picking up the oath here again with the strategy that I'm gonna play like a control deck, not like a ninja deck. To that end, here, taking Gravelighter is just generally, I think, a decent card, and I like that it plays well in most strategies. Like if you're playing like a tempo-oriented strategy that's like more aggressive, then it's, you know, a 2/2 flyer, and the flexibility of, okay, you can make them sack if they're like down on, if they have like one big blocker, or if you attack all and trade things off and you get to draw cards off it. It's just overall, I think, a decent pickup. I will mention that Klong Torment to me is very good in most blue-black decks where you are doing the ninja thing. I've heard people make the argument, it's like, oh, they don't like Klong Torment because like they attack with a ninja and they can ninjutsu it. But if they're spending their turn to bounce their own creature to get rid of your Klong Torment and you were pressuring them, I think, you know, it's already done its job anyways. Like that's typically a good result. So yeah, I really like Klong Torment in blue-black normally, but again, I'm not in my normal blue-black deck here. So anywho, taking Gravelighter. And this was painful to see. I really like this card. I think it's quite good. Yeah, if I had pulled the trigger on the Boseiju, I could have picked this up, and I was thinking about it. But again, we're not there. And I don't mind picking up the Companion here. I think on 3, getting something that I can then ninjutsu the specialist is not bad if, you know, I'm trying to stave off dying against some of the more low to the ground like red decks or something. It creates 2 bodies again for defensive purposes, and it has some nice synergies with what I have already in that, like, you can Gravelighter, sack the token to generate some value. You can it creates 2 bodies for Chef to sack, and then there are going to be lines too, maybe where like I have this and like the Scrounger, I can chump with the 1/1 to stay alive, and that gets me a token to ramp into like Kyrie or Oath or something like that. So overall, I think this is kind of supports what I'm trying to do with the deck, and so I pick up the Companion here. And again, just kind of drilling home the point that the demands of the deck, I think, are more important than what your archetype is necessarily for the format. Normally in blue-black, I actually don't mind playing one of these. I think that a lot of the blue-black decks, it's important that they get in, especially if you have like multiple hackers where you have a really cheap way to capitalize on, you know, your opponent not being able to block. This is a perfectly playable card, and I've played one of it in a lot of my ninja decks and been pretty happy with it. But again, if I'm planning to have a more controlling strategy, I actually kind of wanted to pick up the Sphere here, and I usually don't play Sphere very much. I think that, like, for example, in the blue-green decks, they have better things to do with their mana than paying 4 mana to draw 2 cards, right? Because they have, I forget what it's called, Season, the one that gets stuff back from the graveyard. They have, you know, channel things they can be doing. They can ramp. They can, you know, they have a lot of bigger things and better things to be doing, and ways to generate advantage. But in this particular shell, I don't have access to those things, and so I need a way to generate card advantage. I know that I want to hit my land drops, right? So having a certain extent of what I might think of as like card velocity, right? Being able to draw through my deck so that I get to do the things I want to do and hit the cards that are important matters. And so here, even though I normally am not on Sphere very much in most decks in the format, I think given where I'm at, I think it's perfectly defensible. And so I was okay to pick one up here. And here, not much else. Same argument I made for it last pick still applies this pick. I rarely play 1 Sphere in a deck, but again, I might end up playing 2 here, just because of the way the deck is constructed. Here I end up with not too much for me. I realize I don't have a lot of like targeted interaction. Like I have some stuff that interacts, like the Gravelighter, the Long Reach, and the Life of Tashiro, but I don't really have an answer for like an opposing threat that much. I mean, I can bounce it, but so I took the prototype. I not ecstatic about trying to play it, but at the same time, I'm not giving much up, and having access to this if I need it in my final build, I think is more important than these other cards that I'm unlikely to play given where I'm at. Here, I don't remember what I picked here. I think it was the crab. Probably, again, I don't mind playing a crab here. I haven't picked one up yet, I think. So yeah, I think this seems like a crab pick. Again, same argument before. I'm not playing two of these. I'm not interested in these things. I could take the dual land, but I don't really have anything in green that I'm really looking to splash. Gloom Shrieker, I think it's called, the 2/1 that recurs a permanent. I don't have permanents that, like, at least early on, I really want to be recurring. And then if I live long enough, I'd like to think I'm still doing okay with, like, I have other ways to generate card advantage without needing the splash land. So yeah, I think I'm on crab here. And yeah, so we get pick up the crab. Here, I think pretty much none of these cards matter. I'll just take like a random one. I could see an argument for the bargain, but I don't, even with like some of these like small creature synergies, like, because I have the chef already, so let's say I have, companion to make some tokens or something. I'm not really big on like sacking my creature to do that. I'd rather just have a body on board. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I should have picked this card. I think I just took just Sentinel, which I'm never playing. But yeah, I just don't think that it's what I want to be doing. Here, the Fang of Shigeki wheels, I think I just pick it up just because, but I'm pretty set now. I don't think I'm moving into green. And here, yeah, just random stuff. Pretty happy to see this familiar come back. My 2-drop and early play slot is actually not especially great here. I have a Virus Beetle. This protocol, I'm not really convinced I'm playing anymore. I don't have like an aggressive package. I don't have multiple disruptors. And so, yeah, I have basically a Life of Toshiro and a couple like kind of weak things. And I want to make the point, I don't know that I'm playing the Disruptor at this point either, right? Because I'm not trying to like get in, and I don't have the support to apply consistent pressure to my opponent, which means it ends up being kind of just like a 1-mana 1/1, which is not, not really what I want to be doing, it feels like. So point being, I'm really happy to pick up the familiar here. My 2-drop slot is kind of lacking, and I actually, in a controlling shell, I like it quite a bit, because it's secretly like a 2-drop that's maybe better than average, even in that your opponent can't interact with it. So like if you're have a red opponent, it costs them 3 mana now to Volt Surge it, or they can't flare it, or if a lot of times the red decks go like maybe 1-drop, 2-drop into like that ogre that makes something unblockable, and this one can't be hit by the unblockable, right? So like there's a lot of things that I think make this in this particular deck decent. And all I want from my 2-drop is to trade with their 2-drop and to not die. I don't need to pressure super hard. And so I kind of like this pickup here. I'm pretty fortunate to have gotten it. Here, nothing for us. And on to this pack. And so here, this is to me where, like, again, thinking about what the deck wants becomes important. Cards that I'm interested in here. The familiar, actually, because again, I don't have a lot of 2-drops. The Disruptor, I think, is actually kind of a trap. I think people maybe who are used to playing blue-black realize that this is a very good blue-black card and could maybe pick it up here. But again, I don't even know that I want the one Disruptor I have, right? I don't have support to be doing this ninja thing, really. I didn't build my deck that way or make choices that support that. So yeah, I'm actually pretty far off of the Disruptor here. I think I'd even rather have the familiar. And also, though, I like this Haven because, again, I have this Oath that I'd like to play. If I don't get any fixing, I could see maybe, not leaving it in the board. But seeing as I have the opportunity to get this here, I think it's great because, again, I'd really like to play this Oath. And yeah, I also think that there's a chance that the familiar wheels too. I just got one like pick 13 or something like that. And there's a Disruptor that is typically a better blue card in the pack anyways. So I'm taking the Haven and hoping to wheel the familiar if I need it here. On this one, I'm really happy to pick up the March. I needed some interaction, right? Remember we were talking about the Moon Snare as just I might need it as some form of interaction. But again, this is exactly what a controlling deck wants. You can deal with the cheap things and gain life. awesome. You eventually in the long game, you get enough mana, you can often remove something big with it too. And it does have some amount of flexibility. Of course, you don't want to be exiling your cards to support your removal, but sometimes, especially given you have the life gain as well, against like maybe mono red, maybe, there are times where you should do that. And so the flexibility of it, I like it quite a bit. Note that I'm passing some good black cards, Reckoner Raid, Beetle. And I remember doing a quick inventory on this pack too, because I think there's an opportunity that I can wheel this Beetle. Remember, I have the read that I think, especially from this direction, that black is somewhat open. I know I didn't see a ton of black in like pack 2, but looking at the pack, I remember that there were decent number of red cards missing in some of the early picks in early packs from pack 1, and I see that the red decks will probably want these cards. So if I count like 1, 2, 3 is a good card, 4, 5, but green was kind of close, maybe let's say 4, and then 5, 6, and maybe a red card, maybe a Fang, or I only counted one of these two, maybe they both go. But given that black doesn't seem like especially overdrafted at the table, and I'm leaving a really good black card in the pack, and the rest of the pack also is not bad, I think there's a chance I can wheel this Beetle, and so I keep that in mind as well. So here we get the March from this pack. Here I do have a really good target for this, and again, like the rare lands here, all upside, right? So I have a great target in the Kyrie, but I actually want to pick up the Hacker here. And again, it's not that I don't think that I'm going ninjas, so to speak, at this point. But I think the Hacker is just in general a good card. And having access to a 1-mana ninja means that I get access to like the Moonsnare ninja loops, right? Because let's say you attack and you have an unblocked creature, and you ninja in the Specialist, bounce a creature, ninja in the Hacker, and then you get a card and you get the Specialist back to hand. So collectively, right, you're paying 4 mana for both ninja abilities, and what you're getting is bounce a creature and draw a card. So to some extent, that's a build your own Into the Royal, right? You paid 4 mana, bounce something, drew a card. That's pretty great. And it also, again, as mentioned earlier, I do need 2-drops, right? So there's going to be a decent percentage of the time probably I'm just playing this on 2. And so I think this fits the needs of the deck. And we had mentioned briefly earlier, I have some high impact sagas. And so being able to bounce those sagas for 1 mana and then replay them is definitely a viable strategy in some of the grindier matchups. And I'm pretty happy to pick up this ninja here given my lack of 2-drops. From here, not too much for me. Again, in blue-black, normally, again, just to kind of keep the same point going, Infiltrator is a playable card in blue-black because it supports the ninja themes, but we're not there. And I want to play this Oath. So Tranquil Cove, I think, is a great pickup. And yeah, so I don't think that I'm my normal blue-black. I'm planning to play a control strategy here. Moving on to here. So again, 5th pick, Twisted Embrace, kind of looking like black might be a bit open again as we had thought, which is great. And I would like another card that just is like a straight up removal in this deck. Having a handful of answers to my opponent's threats while I can do my own thing is important. I like the Hacker still for all the reasons we mentioned, and I think in this deck it's still good, and in the blue-black ninja deck, just as a comment, I think this is just an absurd card. Like you should be picking this highly if you know you're in that deck, but again, I think I'm on Twisted Embrace here. And then here I'm happy to pick up another Oath. Again, I'm planning a control strategy here. This is exactly what I wanted. I am a little bit light on my top end. Right now I'd have like an Oath and a Kyrie, which are both great things to be doing at the top, but having one more thing I think is a big deal. So this is a really fortunate pickup for me. Again, normally I'd probably be on the Prowler because I don't like to splash in like my aggressive blue-black decks, but again, that's not where we're at. So here I got... I think like nothing. I don't remember what I picked here. We don't really have anything in our colors. I'm not looking to splash like the Repel along with the Imperialos. And I'm not really near any of this stuff, so maybe I just take the bargain and we'll leave it in the board or something. Yeah. And So here, a pick 8 Virus Beetle. Again, that's awesome. Black looking open. I don't know for certain. Who knows? Maybe I'm just absurdly lucky. There's, 5 other black cards in the pack, and this was the worst of them. But either way, I'm really happy to pick it up. It feels great. Here, from these ones, so this is interesting. I had mentioned earlier how I liked and wanted the Arm Guard Familiar. But things have changed a little bit for me in that I've now picked up a Hacker and a Virus Beetle. And so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, let's say I count this, 5, and maybe 6 reasonable early plays now. Again, I think I'm not going to play the Disruptor from this point, so I wasn't counting that one. And also, and this is where it influences my decision a bit, I kind of want a way to end the game a little bit. I know I have good top end. I have 2 O's and a Kyrie, but having a 3-power flyer, I think, does have value in a deck like this because it allows you to still apply some amount of pressure. I have some artifacts that are worthwhile for looting. I think it came up before in a game where I was doing things with the Chef and the Scrounger, and then the artifacts here are triggering the Koi so I can loot, and then, it draws and so forth. So there's some nice synergies too going on. And also remember that in pick 2, there was a Beetle there, and I was considering that it might wheel. So that influences my decision here a little bit. I think this is really close to me. I want this Koi and I want this Familiar, but I think that there's some percentage of the time that Beetle wheels, meaning that if it does, I might not even play this Familiar, and if it doesn't, I probably would rather have the Familiar. I don't actually know for certain because, again, the reconfigure does represent a threat in and of itself sometimes, but at the same time, I don't think that I'm just like dead if I don't pick up the Beetle on the wheel. So like, if I were, let's say I had 2 less early plays here, there's no way I'm not picking the Familiar here. I can't afford to take that risk. But I think that given that I have picked up some early plays and I can, maybe not ideal, but I can get away with having maybe 1 less, then I can afford to gamble on the Koi, which I think the deck wants here. So here I pick it up, and again, a bit fortunate for me, the Beetle does come back, so just easy pick for me here. And then the rest of this are stuff that I don't think matters that much. Interestingly, I know that sometimes people like to throw "You Are Only Dead" in the deck, or "You're Already Dead," because like, oh cool, I have a bunch of Beetles, and that is a relevant interaction, and I think it comes up in some of the decks, but I don't think I'm really looking to like attack that much with my Beetles. And this card has a huge downside when like there's just nothing damaged in play and there's no combat happening and you're just like down a card, and if you're like, oh, I can't hit my land drops and I can't cast my cards, because you come to sometimes end up in those spots, and it's just not, I think, not that, how do I word it? It's a little more clunky than it looks because you can't just cast it to cycle, right? So I'm not really too interested in playing it in this version of the deck. If I was doing one that has more attacking and incentivizes them to be doing more blocking, then I'm willing to play it, but I'm not excited about it here. And yeah, so here I end up with this one for the deck, I think. So this is what the final build looked like. Note the things that I didn't include. So the Disruptor came out. I didn't end up wanting the prototype because I picked up a lot of other interaction, which made this decision a little easier, right? So I had the Twisted Embrace and the March now. I can clog the ground with the Oaths, which I got the fixing for, and a second one. And so I don't think that I needed the prototype, so that one came out. The Disruptor we had mentioned earlier. I don't have a lot of like early 2-drop ninjas. I don't have like the 3/2 lifelinker on 2. I don't have the 3/2 that makes a treasure. I have 1 hacker, so I'm not curving out Disruptor into ninjas very often, and I don't have things that I really need to get in with. I'd rather just have cards that are higher impact for me and can support the plan of my deck. Note that I am playing both spheres here because firstly, it can smooth your draws a little bit. There are going to be times when you want to channel it even though it's not ideal, and having access to that matters, I think. And then also, again, just having ways to draw cards is important in these kinds of decks because maybe I can stay alive and maybe I can, not die. But if I don't have my threats immediately, then being able to both dig for them and also make sure to hit my land drops so that I don't have an Oath rotting in my hand on 4 lands, right, I think can matter. So I'm okay and happy to play both of these here. Here, again, I didn't end up in the Ninja version. I don't want this really. And yeah, so this is the build. And so that's about it. If you guys have any thoughts, feel free to let me know. And then as like a bonus, if anyone want to stick around, I was going to show one game from here that I was pretty proud of how I played it. I thought I played it well, and also I thought it was a pretty interesting game. So here I'm on the draw. So this is an interesting one for me. On the play, I'm like super happy to keep this. Wait, am I on the play or the draw? I'm on the play. I lied to you guys. But yeah, I'm happy to keep this. And I do think it is interesting though, because like you don't have an early two mana play. And so you have some options to get run over. But the things I considered, I have all the mana I need to cast everything, I think, in my deck except the Kairi. And because for my hand, right, I have the white, I have double black for Embrace, and I have a 3 mana, two options on my 3 mana play. So here we start with this. Opponent, of course, with my slow hand, starts with turn 1 Rabbit Battery, swings in which case I'm happy I gained the 1 life against red too. And then here, draw a tap land. I'm playing blue because I need double blue to cast it. Now I can cast everything in my deck and nothing else really to cast this turn. Opponent swings and passes. So here, this was a really, really interesting decision point for me, because I think that when the red deck keeps a hand of 7 and then doesn't do anything on turn 2, the likelihood that they have a removal spell, whether it be like a Volt Surge or like a Flare, is very high. And so my decision here is I can either cast a Sphere, just use my mana on something. I can hold up Crab, which if they have like to counter their 3-drop play, and then maybe hit my land drop and either play Octopus or just draw so that I can get to be more likely to get to Oath faster, or on curve, I should say. And yeah, this one I remember thinking about quite a bit, and I ended up deciding to play the Octopus, and the reasoning was I actually think they're more likely to kill it than they are not, meaning I expect the Octopus to die, and I acknowledge that that's bad for me. But I think that if they don't have anything, that this is such a massive, massive advantage to have on board. Because let's say they play their turn 3, they play a creature, I kill it with the Embrace because they're tapped out, they played their creature, and I get a hit in with the Octopus. That's like game winning right there. And so for me, I also thought that even though it's bad if they kill it, that it was an acceptable risk given that Oath is great at catching back up on the ground, and that I don't like keeping up the Crab was my next option. I think the Sphere was my last choice. And I think there's definitely decisions there, but I just think it's so good if they, in the off chance, let's say maybe they're 65-35, right? For 65, they're going to kill it, and 35, they have nothing. I just, again, arbitrarily made those up. But if that's the case, I feel like that 35% is, when it works, is worth a lot, because it just feels like such a huge advantage to have this on board. And again, the Oath is kind of, the Embrace is kind of dead in my hand if I don't have a target for it anyways. So I went for it. They do have the Flare, so that sucks, but here they hit in, they play their 3-drop. Little unusual Guardians, but I can see it looks like they have a Guardian Rabbit Battery thing going on here. And here was another interesting decision point. I can either Sphere or I can hold up Crab. If I hold up Crab here and they just like equip and hit and I take 4, that seems not great for me. And so I thought it was more important that I dig to either answers for what they're doing and or land drops, because I can hit 5, but I want to make sure that I hit 6 on curve given what my opponent's doing. And so here I cast a Sphere. They equip, they hit, I draw. I noticed that they don't play anything. They hit their land drop, they're on 3 and do nothing. So there are 2 thoughts I have here. I can put them on Crab, or I can put them on a removal spell, right? Those, I guess, maybe out of blue-red 2, maybe Thirst. But those are that's what I'm kind of thinking at this point. And so I make the decision to pass the turn. I think there's a temptation to get on board when you're behind. And again, you don't want to take damage versus like the red decks. But at the same time, against all the things that I put them on, if they had Thirst, I mean, I maybe even want to just counter that rather than have a 3/3 that Notice can't block anyways. Or I mean, it would be a chump block. And all the other things, if I let them use their mana this turn, like I play it and they crab it and then they hit me for 4 and play something else, or I play it and they remove it and then they play something else and they hit me again, right? Then I think you just lose on the spot. So I don't think that I can play the Koi here, and I have to hold up the crab and just be willing to take my extra hit, knowing that ideally I'll get Oath down the next turn. And it's interesting too, because you have to, I guess, if I do this, they hit me for 4 and they just pass again, I'm kind of in a really bad spot. But at the same time, assuming they have crab, that is, right? Then I'm in a pretty bad spot. But if they have the crab and I play the 3/3 anyways, they counter it. And the same thing we said before, I'm still in a bad spot. So I think my best shot is to hope that they want to play something on their turn 5 and drop crab if they have it, so that I can counter it and then get on board with the Oath. I think that's the main way that I'm back in the game. So here, and fortunately they tap out for their 5-drop. I get to counter it, which is great. They have, their mana's all down now, and I get to resolve the Oath. Here, the Scries, I get 3 spells, which are great. The Gravelighter looks good. Companion is 2 bodies, so I'm happy to keep it, and the Life of Toshiro I want because, firstly, there might be some scenarios where my thought process of keeping it on top is that if they tap out for something or play a creature, then I can Twisted Oath whatever the Rabbit Battery is on, and then Life of Toshiro, the Rabbit Battery. And I want to get the life going early because that way I get the creature a turn earlier too on board, and also gaining the life earlier can sometimes be relevant. So I keep this on top. I keep the Gravelighter because if I have a plan to remove 2 of their creatures and I have these, I'll have a Virus Beetle lying around, then the Gravelighter the next turn is a viable way to maybe remove their last creature or again, at least trade the Virus Beetle for something better than it. And then I'm happy to have this as just a backup. Just, it's a spell, it's 2 bodies. And I get a loot off of it, off the Koi if I end up wanting that. So here they swing, and I remember that turn they kept 3 mana up. I didn't know they have crab. There's a chance they had a removal spell they just had no target for. And so here was interesting. I think if I triple block, then I lose on the spot to removal. On this, maybe, yeah, probably on the spot, because then I don't have any target for my Twisted Embrace. They get my whole board, and then they probably can have some kind of follow-up as well. But I also don't want to take 4 damage from 10 here against the red deck, so I'm just on a chump block. And I kind of made it kind of internal assessment that I have enough good things in my hand and on the top of my deck from the Scry that I can afford to throw away a 2/2 here and still come out ahead this game. If I didn't have as much gas going on here, I might be more willing to take the risk and just triple block it and say, okay, if they have it, I lose. But I think I can beat those removal spells here, so I'm just going to chump block. They keep their mana up again, which is kind of interesting. And so here, my plan, remember, when keeping the life on top was I wanted to Twisted Embrace something, kill the Guardian or whatever their creature was, and then Life of Toshiro, the 1/1. But now they're all untapped, and I know that they had potentially a removal spell before from the 3 mana turn. And so this is a little iffy. So I have some decisions to make. I can, the most greedy, if I assume they have nothing, which I think is wrong. But the most greedy, I could play the Twisted Embrace, kill this, Life of Toshiro, kill the 1/1, hit for 5. If they have nothing, I'm crushing. But if I cast a Twisted Embrace and they remove it, then I have this 4/5 that they have to deal with. I don't have an answer for it. I'm not really liking that very much. So I also have to consider if they have crab, so I can get this in under the crab, but then they get to counter the Life of Toshiro, which is fine. They can keep the 1/1, is not the end of the world here. And And alternatively, I could like swing for the 4 first and then try and Twisted Embrace just to make a hedge, but I don't think the extra 2 damage in that line matters that much. I think the thing that really matters is whether or not the Twisted Embrace resolves. So that one I think doesn't make a lot of sense either. So what I ended up on is just swing for 4, play the Koi out first, and then follow it up with the Virus Beetle. This way I get to loot, and here I actually decided not to loot because I want both of these cards and I want the Gravelighter next turn. So I declined the trigger on the Koi, which actually in hindsight I think was a mistake, not to decline the trigger, but if I was going to decline the trigger, I should have played the Virus Beetle first. On one hand, it kind of says the same information that I didn't want the loot, but on the other hand, like it's more perceivable by my opponent that it's just like a misplay than that it's definitive information that like, hey, you want to loot? And I was like, nah. And then here, so okay, they had a removal spell, so this was really good that I didn't Twisted Embrace. So they get to remove the 3/3, and so here again, pretty happy that I held off on this. Here they swing. And this is really interesting too. On one hand, I don't want to take damage, but on the other hand, this 1/1 isn't just a 1/1 right now because I have the Gravelighter on the top of my deck, so it represents a sack, which means that I might be able to remove their creature with it. So I decided to take the 4, especially given that I have the Life of Toshiro if I need to recuperate some of the life. And then they just pass again, so I don't really know what to make of this. I think maybe they had Crab and a removal spell. I don't know. So I'm trying to sequence my plays so that I can prioritize the important things first. I was kind of thinking about whether I should attack first or Gravelighter first. And the thought was like, I was just trying to figure out if something dies, I don't get the sack. Even if it's not like the 1/1, right? As long as if something dies, then I'm going to draw a card instead, which is fine, but not preferable. So I think I just decided on swing with everything first. So I'm like, here, I'm tapping my mana. I was going to Gravelighter, but I realized that if they had some way to kill something, they can just respond to the Gravelighter anyway. So I might as well get my damage in. And then play this. Again, I'm playing this first because if they have Crab, well, firstly, this needs to die beforehand. And if they have another removal spell, then Twisted Embrace is worse because they can counter it, but they can't counter the Gravelighter with, well, okay. They can counter the Gravelighter with the removal in the sense that they can remove one of my creatures, but then I still get the draw off of it, and then I'll have Twisted Embrace as a backup potentially. Whereas if I Twisted Embrace first, and then they remove one of these, and then I play the Gravelighter, then the Gravelighter is going to draw, and they get to keep their 4/5. So this way I have kind of 2 chances to kill their creature. Here, so we get it. I think I played the Life of Toshiro afterwards, and they did have a Crab, so they ended up countering it, which not ideal for me, but not the end of the world. Is fine. I have board and I have a removal spell. They draw. They go Boar. No attack, interestingly enough. I mean, on one hand, yeah, it trades for 2 of my 3 creatures. But I guess they were holding up the trample, maybe they draw a trick, so maybe it does make sense that there's no attack, because next turn, if they have like a way to pump it or a way to remove or lock down some blockers, that it could represent more of a lethal threat. So, but here they're tapped out, so I Twisted Embrace on one of the Vigilance creatures, kill it, swing in, play this, and they draw and then concede, and we got the win. So yeah, definitely an interesting one. And yeah, if you stuck around for this, thanks for watching. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions or comments or things that you think I could have done differently or considerations from the draft or the game. All right, see ya.